Hindenburg Burns in Lakehurst Crash by Russell B. Porter, May 6, 1937. Naval Air Station, Lakehurst, New Jersey. The Zeppelin. Hindenburg was destroyed by fire and explosions here at 7:23 o'clock tonight, with a loss of 33 known dead and unaccounted for out of its 97 passengers and crew. 3 hours after the disaster, 21 bodies had been recovered, and 12 were still missing. The 64 known to be alive included 20 passengers and 44 of the crew. Many of the survivors were burned or injured or both, and were taken to hospitals here and in nearby towns. The accident happened just as the great German dirigible was about to tie up to its mooring mast, 4 hours after flying over New York City on the last leg of its first transatlantic voyage of the year. Until today, the Hindenburg had never lost a passenger throughout the 10 round trips it made across the Atlantic, with 1,002 passengers in 1936. F. W. von Meister, vice president of the American Zeppelin Company, gave two possible theories to explain the crash. One was that a fire was caused by an electrical circuit induced by static conditions as the ship valved hydrogen gas preparatory to landing. Another was that sparks set off when the engines were throttled down while the gas was being valved caused a fire or explosion. Captain Ernst Lehmann, who commanded the Hindenburg on most of its flights last year and was one of tonight's survivors, gasped, "I couldn't understand it," as he staggered out of the burning control car. Captain Max Pruss, commanding officer of the airship, and Captain Albert Stamp were also among the survivors. Captain Lehmann was critically burned and injured. The other officers were also burned, but less seriously. Experts in lighter-than-air operations who saw the accident said tonight that when the two landing lines were dropped by the dirigible at 7:20, they were immediately made fast to the mooring cars on the circular track about the mooring mast. The crew began to make the line taut, but the ship had gathered too much momentum, according to 3 observers, and drifted several hundred yards past the mast. The starboard line pulled hard as the nose of the ship passed over the mooring mast at the top. Captain Pruss, making his first trip in command of the dirigible, signaled and shouted, "Pay out!" This order was heard by the operator on one mooring car, but not by the other, as the shout went against the wind and could not be heard. Consequently, one mooring car paid out and the other did not. The result was that the ship was thrown off its balance and lost the perfect equilibrium it had previously had. Its nose dipped, forward ballast was dropped, and the elevators were set to raise the ship. Instead, the ship was held tight by one yaw line. The nose was pulled over, and the elevators had an effect opposite to that which they were intended to have, according to this version. The tail dropped sharply, and the bottom rudder hit the earth. The ship bounded up again, then suddenly burst into flames and dropped to the ground. It is understood that this version of the accident will be investigated by the Naval Board of Inquiry, convened for tomorrow, and the Department of Commerce. The official investigation will also look into conflicting reports as to whether the fire was accompanied or preceded by explosions. Although most observers reported hearing a series of explosions, some insisted that there were no explosions until after the ship was almost destroyed by fire. F. E. Fagg, head of the Bureau of Aeronautics of the Department of Commerce, flew in from Washington late tonight and conferred with Commander Charles E. Rosendahl, in charge of the air station. Mr. Fagg announced that Commander Rosendahl would preside over the Board of Inquiry to open tomorrow. Commander Rosendahl, together with the 200 members of the ground crew, which had started to walk the dirigible to its mooring place, narrowly escaped injury when the Hindenburg fell in flames. The catastrophe was witnessed by several hundred spectators, including several who had booked passage on the return trip of the Hindenburg to Germany, which had been scheduled to start at midnight tonight. Passengers and crew members who were interviewed after the accident were unable to give much information as to the cause of the accident or the manner in which it occurred. Most of them said that it happened too quickly, and they were too stunned by the crash to be able to tell exactly what had happened. Commander Rosendahl took charge of the rescue work and summoned ambulances and fire engines from a wide area. Late tonight, ambulances filled with doctors and nurses were still arriving here from as far distant points as Jersey City. While firemen fought the scorching flames, rescuers dragged out injured persons and bodies of the dead. The burned and injured were carried from the wreck to a nearby road, where ambulances pulled up and took them aboard for hurried trips to the naval hospital here and hospitals in nearby cities. As the bodies were recovered, they were taken to an improvised morgue on the naval reservation. At midnight, although the flames had been put out, the embers were so hot that the rescuers were unable to complete their search of the wreckage. It was believed that additional bodies would be discovered tomorrow when the search is finished. Coroner Raymond A. Taylor of Lakewood came here tonight and made plans for an inquest, which probably will be held tomorrow after all the bodies have been recovered. A hangar was being used as an impromptu morgue. Commander Rosendahl ordered a cordon of sailors around the wreckage to keep sightseers away, and also set up guards outside the reservation to keep everybody out who did not have business inside. State troopers and Marines were stationed at all crossroads within a 1-mile radius of the air station, closing the roads to all except police, officials, rescue workers, and newspapermen. Immediately after the disaster, special details of police cleared all highways to make way for doctors and nurses speeding to the scene from other points. Heavy fire engines and police emergency trucks clanging to the scene helped to keep the roads clear. But while the rescue work was underway, thousands of motorists converged toward the scene on all highways leading to Lakehurst. Before many of the injured had been taken from the first aid stations on the field, lines of automobiles clogged the road for nearly 10 miles on the main arteries to the north and south of the air station. Harassed rescue workers and ambulance drivers complained that the press of the advancing crowd was so great that it was seriously hampering their work, as many policemen as could be spared were sent from the scene to patrol the surrounding roads and keep them clear. A detail of National Guardsmen from Fort Monmouth took up stations on the main highways, several miles from the air station, and ordered motorists to turn back.